process of forming a long-term memory is referred to as consolidation. Memory consolidation seems to take place during sleep. Neurons in the hippocampus, as well as cortical areas, repeat the firing patterns that occurred while the person was awake learning how to do something. And this has been found in human participants as well as in rats, even down to the level of the specific type of neural activity that we're seeing in the pattern of neural activity. So it suggests that long-term potentiation is a process that allows a pattern of neural activity to be strengthened so that particular neural pathways are strengthened, allowing a group of neurons to fire together when we are remembering something. So let's take a look at this set of brain images in a person who had earlier learned to do this particular activity. We see that brain activity was greater during sleep in these brain areas that were involved than an individual who did not learn that particular activity during the day. And so we're seeing that a part of the brain that is active in a particular task that you're learning kicks in again and becomes active again at night while you're sleeping. And we don't see that same pattern if you hadn't spent the day learning how to do something. Now, why do we see that type of brain activity during sleep? Is because the hippocampus is turning on these areas of the cortex when the brain is less busy so that the memory can become consolidated and more permanent. Just like LTP allows the strengthening of particular neural pathways, there is another process that actually decreases the flow of information within a neural pathway. So just like we can learn something, we can sort of forget it in a way. So this is different though than what you might have heard of before as extinction or, for example, systematic desensitization. These are techniques that create new memories where we learn that something that we had become afraid of before, we no longer need to fear. So it's a new type of learning where something that we had learned before is no longer true. So if I have a phobia of spiders and then I get treated for that using systematic desensitization or extinction type therapy, there would be really a new learning on top of my original fear that is telling me, yeah, I know I've been afraid of spiders, but now I know that they are perfectly safe, and I've learned that I can be very comfortable and feel perfectly calm even if I'm holding a spider in my hand. This type of new learning requires activation of NMDA receptors, just like LTP, because it is a form of LTP, right? It's a formation of a new memory. In contrast, forgetting, when we really, really forget something, that's different. This is where we kind of say, I haven't used this particular piece of information, haven't thought about something in a long, long time, so that my brain is able to learn new things and have plenty of synapses for new information. Let's get rid of this old information. So this is a more active, adaptive biological process where those synaptic pathways that were previously strengthened get deleted. And this is thought to be possible through a process called long-term depression, LTD. Now, this has nothing to do with the psychological condition of depression, but it does involve the removal of AMPA receptors. And so we can see that the process of long-term depression removes an AMPA receptor. And that makes sense, right? Because long-term potentiation increases AMPA receptors in dendrites. And so we can think of LTD, long-term depression, as getting rid of those. One really interesting thing that we've learned about recently is that when we recall a memory, in other words, during memory retrieval, an interesting thing happens. The memory goes through consolidation again. So this is called reconsolidation. What that means is every time we recall a memory, it goes into this state where it can form new associations, new connections. This provides, on the positive, an opportunity to refine the memory, correct errors in it, for example. And this also provides an opening in cases of post-traumatic stress disorder, for the painful and stressful memory to be modified so that it's no longer quite so painful and stressful, so that it no longer produces that kind of fear response in a person. However, it also creates an opportunity, an opening to create false memories. Psychologists have learned that false memories are way too easy to create, and that as far as your brain is concerned, there is no difference between a false memory and a real memory. They are both just as real in terms of the underlying brain changes, because a false memory is when some incorrect information gets connected to a pre-existing memory. And this is one thing that can happen during recollection. So for example, if at one point you are telling a story about a 5th birthday party, so a 5-year birthday party that you're remembering, and right now in the house, as you're telling the story to your best friend, is your uncle. Your uncle, however, was not really at that 5-year birthday party. But you might, from now on, falsely remember your uncle being present at that party many, many years ago. Why? Because his presence now somehow got accidentally connected to the story you were telling your best friend about your birthday party back when you were 5. And so from now on, it's possible that you would remember your uncle being at that party. And there have been lots of studies looking at how individuals will start to falsely remember information about their childhood just from having someone else tell them, hey, I heard that this happened to you. And as long as enough detail is provided, the individual can falsely remember a whole event happening. One of the most famous ones is people having a false memory of being lost at the mall, only because a researcher planted that memory by asking them about it and assuming that it happened, and having enough background knowledge that everything else made sense. And it gets to the point where people even falsely remember not just being lost at the mall, but wearing their favorite pair of red sneakers, for example. So the memories that we form through this reconsolidation process, even if they are false, can be very detailed and in fact are absolutely identical to our real memories.